What's up, man?
How you doing?
Good.
Good to be here.
Good. Thanks for having us.
Little hot.
Yes. Will, back me up on this. It was. I told him it didn't hit hundreds until August last summer.
Yeah, that's probably right.
And then this year it hit hundreds like in early June.
I take pride in my fitness, and this was a very humbling couple days of trail runs. Yeah.
But for a Texan to go up to the elevation in Utah, they would be
same.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's more reasonable. Like you're up in the elevation, but you wouldn't think that 30, 40 degree change can just stop you in your tracks.
Yeah, man.
It's nuts.
With age too. Yeah, I always say age ain't like whiskey. It doesn't get better with time.
That's true.
But I'd love to when the temperatures spike. Like for one season, they're like, "Oh, global warming." You're like, "Okay, all right, let's simmer down now." So you're in Park City, Utah.
Yep, from Wisconsin originally, but lived in Park City the last 7 years.
We're in Wisconsin.
A little town called Barron. I grew up on a dairy farm. So northwest Wisconsin, kind of east of Minneapolis, actually, across the border.
Actually working the farm as a kid?
Oh, yeah. I always tell people, like, it's funny. I wanted to play Little League growing up. My dad's like, no, you're actually going to bale hay. Like, I have a hernia scar from throwing hay bales when I was 8 years old. Like, it was pretty hard up there.
You're kidding me.
That's just what we did,
Like, what time were you getting up in the mornings?
Chores started at 4:30 in the morning.
So you were up at 4? Or did you go to like
I was up at like
4:28?
4:28.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I like your style. And then even during the school year, then done.
Yeah, I can't say every single day. I mean, there were times when I think my mom did a lot of defending of me and my brothers growing up that got us some extra sleep here and there. But if it was up to my dad, that's the way he had it. So that's why I was going to do it. And I mean, look, it built a great work ethic moving forward. But I felt like my childhood was a generation behind like all of my friends. You know what I mean? Like I grew up like my dad grew up, where it was like there was a lot of work, a lot of blue collar stuff, where my friends were like playing Little League and going to the lake and watching MTV and that kind of thing. Like it was
because
like
the dairy farm is 24/7, 365.
Yeah,
it's not like farming or
they call it animal husbandry, and there's that is I think the best way you put it. It's like you're married to it. Yeah.
Yeah, tit for tat. I honestly like the things you did and learned. Mm-hmm. The foundational habits you built is, you've got to be able. You sort of correlate that to the success and your drive and discipline and commitment.
Yeah, I mean, not to pat myself on the back, but I do think at this.
If you don't do it, I'll do it.
My work ethic, I can usually hang with anybody. I can push further. I can go harder, and I think that's just. Like, I think my DNA changed growing up on a farm. It just became normal. And so my normal's just a lot more involved and aggressive and like consistent than I think other people were raised. So it's helped me a lot in my life.
Okay,
I didn't like it when I was 12, but now I definitely see the value, and thanks mom and dad. But,
yeah.
I wanted to play Little League and,
Well, that begs the question, your work ethic, do you consider yourself a workaholic in some senses?
That's a good question. So I'm single. I'm 43. I've always had this mindset.
We call that smart.
I think, I think I've always had this philosophy that like, I'm going to work when there's nothing, like if I don't have anything else to do, I'm going to work. I'm going to improve my life. And then when I meet somebody or have something else I want to do, I'm going to go do it. Yeah. So I tend to work pretty long hours, long days, but it's just kind of how I have it framed up in my mind. Some people might think I'm a workaholic. Some might not. I don't know. It's just what I do. So it needs to be done.
Some people, and I feel, dude, when you're a employee and you're grinding and you just have no like satisfaction in your job.
Yeah.
I can understand you don't identify work, but I've always found like my DNA is tied to my work.
Oh,
and
totally.
my work identifies my DNA.
Totally. I don't know how to separate the two anymore. Like what I do for a job and what I do in life is all one and the same. And I love that. But it's kind of hard to turn it off sometimes.
Well, but you're a genius too. You've actually tried to monetize doing what you love.
Yes. When I started the company I'm running now, it took me a couple of years to figure it out. But I'm an outdoors person. I wanted to be in the outdoor space, but there's so much outdoor gear. Like to build another Gore-Tex jacket is silly, right? So I just kept looking for like what. I had an old mentor that always said, market space, not marketplace. Like find the gap in the shelves. Like don't build another Red Bull. Figure out what's next.
Yeah.
And it just kind of hit me that, wow, survival, preparedness, and camping are like the same. It's just that one you choose to do and one happens to you, right? So there's a little bit different approach to it, but there was a lane there. And so once I had that in my head, I kind of tested it and like tried to prove myself wrong for a long time. And I was like, no, I think this is a really necessary, needed thing and something I want to do. And so that's what led me down that path.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer in fortune favors not the bold, the prepared.
I literally have that tattoo right here. That's
fortune.
That's in Latin. Fortune favors the bold. Yeah.
Okay. I often said that fortune favors the prepared.
Yeah.
It's in when it comes to survival, if you'd plan for those contingencies, if you're outfitted for those contingencies, things go a lot smoother.
Yeah, I always tell people, like, you don't need a bunker full of stuff. It's just a few things can change a potentially serious situation into just an inconvenience.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much, but nothing is kind of ridiculous. Just assume you don't need anything.
I'm actually heading to Connecticut this weekend for a Netflix series to do an interview. So some kid who recently passed away was out on a boat with his mom. The boat sunk in the Atlantic. He got to a life raft. His mom did not. And he spent 7 days at sea before he was recovered.
Whoa.
And they're like, how is this possible? And he had food. He had water. He had a dry set of clothes that once he was in the raft, he was no longer
cold,
wet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's actually a vacation.
How old was he?
30s.
Oh, 30s. Okay.
And just passed in prison, which maybe makes the documentary even more, tragic. But 7 days at sea, survival situation with food, water. I mean, you get to look
probably
at
good fishing.
Yeah, I know. You probably get, you look, the thing I loved at sea, and I spent 1 4-month period on a ship in the Navy, and that was it. But it was a different ship, awesome mission. In the stars. It's like being in Utah in the wilderness. You look up and you just don't see that anymore.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there's something about nature. I'm sure he probably would have preferred to be in contact with home. Yeah. But I've been in those situations where things are tough and you just got to go, wait a minute, look where I am. Like, I'm fine. It's going to be okay. Like, this is pretty special. Nobody gets to do this. Yeah. I love those feelings, those moments.
Except now that you're out in nature, you see like the 20 Starlink satellites.
I was going to bring that up. I've seen that. The first time I saw that, I was like,
it's the Chinese.
Am I tripping? Like, what is going on? That's a weird thing to see move across the sky.
And how they're equidistant. Yep. It's insane, dude.
Yep.
It's insane. We've come a long way. In Wisconsin, did you guys grow up hunting?
Yeah. Not like a super heavy hunting family. It was very like Wisconsin farm upbringing where like on Thanksgiving, everybody came over, you'd do drives through the cornfields, you'd hunt whitetails. When I grew up, we didn't have smartphones. November, when the hunting season is in Wisconsin,
do we seriously have to say that now? Back then we didn't have smartphones because they're like, what?
Well, what I'm getting at is there was a lot of boredom for like a 15-year-old to sit in a tree when it's 0 degrees out and just wait for hours and hope something walks by. So I did it, but it wasn't something I was super passionate about. It wasn't until like I started hunting out west, chasing elk, and it was really athletic that I was like, oh, this is... I tell people it's like, I think we all have this caveman DNA, and if you turn it on, you just can't turn it off. And when I started doing that, it just changed my whole life. Like every hillside looks different. Everything you look at, you're like, where would the elk be? Or where would the bears be? And I don't know, it's become just an addiction and a part of my core. I love it.
Is it the thrill of the hunt? I mean, what is it?
I don't like killing. I don't like get excited about like shooting something. I think what it is it's like the what's the word I'm looking for? Like when you are like you were talking about the Quakies and the aspens. It's like when you're in the aspens and the leaves are changing and you snuck in on a herd of elk and they're all around you and they're just living. And like the voyeuristic nature of just being among them and seeing how they act and being like, wow, I overcame all of their senses, their eyesight, their smell. I'm in here. Like, to me, that's when, like, if I go home and I don't get a shot, like, that's a good day. That's cool. So for me, it's kind of skills, right?
Yeah.
Can I physically get there? Can I outsmart all of these senses that were tuned by these animals to look out for predators and find my way in? Like, for me, that's like one of the hardest things in life, I think, for like a normal person is like, can you acquire those skills and be successful consistently doing that? I love it.
Plus nature to me is, it's right up there with religion.
Yeah.
It is, nature is absolutely God's palace, man. And I think when you can break away and actually put that phone that you have now down for, well, one, you're not going to get service.
Right.
There's something settling about it.
Yeah. I would say like people go to meditation classes and they go to yoga and they go to Tai Chi. I'm like, have you ever bow hunted? I mean, You're feeling
if
the
you
wind.
say that in a yoga parlor, I'm sure you're going to be like, you savage.
Yeah, but it's like, you got to pay attention to the wind on your face because you have to take the wind into consideration. And you're moving and you're like placing your steps carefully between twigs. You don't make noise. And then you might be halfway into a step and some, cow elk looks at you and you have to freeze. And it's like tight, you like frozen in a position. And there's so many things to it. Your breath work, if you're going to shoot, like, it is shooting, you have to control your heart and your breathing. And I think it's all those things that we had historically that we just don't get in modern life anymore. So people are taking these classes to get that. But for me, like, that checks all the boxes. I get home and I'm like, I feel good. I'm so calm, I'm so relaxed, and I love that.
That is awesome. I'm jealous that you live in Park City.
Dude, come on out anytime.
Do you live in Park City or on the outskirts?
I'm about 7 miles out of town.
7 miles out of town.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Pretty close.
That's gorgeous out there.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I can be at the Salt Lake Airport in an hour. I probably shouldn't say this because we've had so many people move there. I don't need more people moving there and like pumping it, but it's so good. I love
blame
it.
Again, what is the Housewives of Salt Lake City? Even got my wife considering like, should we go to look at Park City and Heber? And I'm like, yes. So you originally, were an athlete in extreme sports. Is that safe to say?
I think you're talking about the BMX.
Yes.
I didn't do that. I actually just put it together. I'm like an average athlete.
Okay,
I played.
So you came up with the concept.
I was a musician for 10 years. And what happened was we played for 7 or 8 years. We did really well. We never signed a record deal. We had some interesting offers, but they were kind of slavery contracts. And we were just making money being a small band regionally and playing a bunch of countries and all over. And
best years of your life?
People go, do you miss it? And I'm like, I miss when it was good. Like when you're in front of a big crowd and everything's rocking, it's awesome. But like we'd go from 96,000 people at like the world's largest block party in Chicago to like 13 people at O'Gara's Garage in St. Paul the next day. And so it was just this non-linear, like,
roller coaster.
What am I doing with my life thing, And I was about to get out of it. We were down here at South by Southwest playing, and some military guys came up and said, hey, you ever thought about playing overseas for the guy serving in Iraq? And I was like, I'm in. So we did a tour. It went really well. And the funny, I guess we got time, I can tell. These are fun stories, but we got over there. We went to Kuwait.
In what year is this?
Oh gosh. You're going to ask me that. I'm gonna have to look it up. It was about 15 years ago, I suppose. So, we go to Arif Jan or one of those, and you go up and fly out of, is it Al Yasalim? You fly out of into Iraq.
Yeah. And
we got up to Camp Takadum, and then we took Ospreys into this place called Camp Korean Village. And that was like our first show.
I think that's...
It's on the Syrian border.
Yeah, I'm trying to... Al-Qaim, I think, is what that is. Yeah.
Yeah, so we landed. I mean, we packed up our gear, flew over, like, it's going to be great. And we get there, and we're sitting in the DFAC, and I look around, I'm like, this is 100% sober dudes, and we're here to sing for them. Like, this is so weird, right? And I'm like, I start freaking out. I'm like, what am I going to do to be cool? Like, if I was a guy and like a bunch of guys showed up to sing for me, I'd be like, what the heck? Like, what are you guys doing? So I'm like sitting there and I look across the room at this like glass freezer full of NA beers. I was like, can I get like 6 or 8 cases of those beers on the stage? And these guys are like, yeah, I guess so, whatever. And we get up there and I told my drummer, I'm like, let's just play some covers. So we started playing like Led Zeppelin, Whole Lotta Love, just down, 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 down. And I'm like, who's the highest ranking officer here? And everybody points, right? Got him up there. I put a guitar on him just to fake it. And I started handing out all the beers. I'm like, we're gonna have the biggest beer fight that Camp Korean Village is ever gonna have, right? And so we had this big NA beer fight, and I was having guys come up and just dive off into the crowd stage dives and all that. And we just had fun. We just had a party.
Yeah.
And we got done, and I didn't know it, but the chief of programs at the time, Colonel Scott Rainey, was there, and he's like, "This is the best show I've ever had. You guys have to come back more and more." So this is a long story, but we came back the second trip then, and having lunch with him, like, what's the hardest thing about your job? And he said, there's like 300 bases I can't get to. And the reason being they were getting these big old PA systems out of Kuwait, which meant they'd have to take a C-130. They didn't want a convoy anywhere. So all the forward operating bases and joint security stations didn't have landing strips. They couldn't go there. So my brother and I measured the inside of a Black Hawk. And at the time we were in Minneapolis working with like Prince and all the guys there in Minneapolis. Yeah. So we had access to these amazing sound engineers. This one guy, Cody Anderson. And we were like, this is the square footage that we can haul stuff around. And we basically built a hot rodded speaker system that would allow us to drop into all these bases. So then we were just like, as much as you guys can come, get over here and play. So we were doing all these shows, and it got to a point where it was too much for us.
Yeah.
So then I started sending other groups, and then we came up with the BMX thing and everything else.
How many tours? Tours? How many times did you go over there?
39.
You went over to Iraq?
Yeah, and they were all 2 or 3 weeks at a time. So, yeah.
Hopefully they weren't paying you guys, right? I mean,
yeah, it
travel.
Was, so yeah, they didn't. We were the lowest. So it ended up being like by year 2 or 3, we had a contract with the DoD to provide entertainment. But I'm really proud of the fact that we were always, as I understood it, the lowest cost providers. What we found out was you had to bid for a business class ticket for any entertainers going over. You didn't have to book a business class ticket. So we would always make people fly coach, which allowed us to save money. So we never charged any kind of fee to the military or anything else. And also, like, anybody that's willing to fly coach to Amsterdam, to Kuwait, is not going to miss a show because they're being a prima donna.
Yeah.
So we got the right people. We never missed shows. They're always the highest rated. And so we kind of made the money off the delta of like booking the different flights.
Yeah.
But for us, it was like, I mean, my brother and I bought several PA systems, like at Ali Salim, like we built the PA system there. We just donated it. One, it was easier for us because we went there all the time, and then we had a setup and we didn't have to bring it. But two, it was like we wanted to give back and do the right thing and not take advantage of the situation. So
39 times.
Yeah, I had a lot of frequent fly miles for a while. It was pretty awesome.
Dude, you served in a different way.
Yeah, I definitely would have had a couple combat patches, I think. If,
were you ever on any bases that you had to have been?
No, but I mean like time in theater. Like, you know, it ended up being like.
But you never got mortared or?
Oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. We landed one time and there was a sniper shooting. We had to like get off this. Is it
like Hillary Clinton in Bosnia? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's any records of this, but I do remember we were coming in and it was like, you guys need to get your heads down and run when we land. And then I remember one time we were in the middle of Baghdad at this old bombed out mall. We played for these dudes. And as we were taking off, we started taking gunfire, and it was just, we're just sitting in a Black Hawk. The doors are open. And we had a surface to air missile almost hit our plane coming into land somewhere once. We did a combat landing, and you could see the corkscrew of the projectile going by. What else happened? I had a car bomb knock me over once. A lot of incoming mortar. You get into a bunker and you hear stuff slapping against concrete walls. Yeah. But as you know, it's like you'll go for 3 trips and absolutely nothing happens. It's so boring, and then all of a sudden it's just every time you turn around, you're kind of ducking. So I always say, like, it's funny. For some reason, a lot of people think I was in the military, probably because I did this. But I always say, like, I was not a cowboy, but I was kind of a rodeo clown. You know, like I was kind of there.
Story of my life. Yeah. Still plays a part. I mean, you ever watch Flint for PBR?
No.
The guy who dresses up as a clown? The guy's an entertainer.
No, I mean, I've been to the rodeos. I mean, those guys are amazing.
Oh, dude. Yeah. I've gotten really close with the PBR, cool. Especially because they created a team series.
Okay.
So I work with the Austin Gamblers, and just like, you've never seen a more values, faith-based community. And I mean, we went to the, Will was with me, we went to the finals and covered it in Dallas. They all stand. They all, recognize the troops, the first responders, everyone standing for the anthem.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and all the writers talk about, God and faith. And I was blown away for a kid from California who never thought he'd follow PBR. Now I follow the writers pretty closely. Yeah,
we have a big rodeo in Oakley, Utah, outside of Park City. It's a really good one. And I actually went with all the guys from Team 1 just June 30th. They were in town training, staying at my buddy's house. We all went, and it was just fun to be there with them. But yeah, you walk up and it's like they're saying a prayer before they start the rodeo. It's super pro-American. Like, it feels good. Like, it's just like, these are my people. I've never ridden a bull, but like, there's a lot of good camaraderie in that stadium with everybody there.
Dalton Castle, who was he was number 2 behind Vito Leme. He said to me, he's like, hey, a cowboy is less about wearing boots and a hat and more about a mindset. And I'm like, I like that, dude. Yeah, that's cool. I really like that. And then I throw on my cowboy hat, and Will's from Texas. He's like, no, doesn't work. Banderas, like, he doesn't like Californians too much.
That's funny.
Yet his boss is one. Dude, that is, I don't know whether to hug you or or kiss you. I mean, to do that, I mean, you had to have had a lot of troops come up and be like, hey, thank you, man. I just needed that.
Yeah. Military, my grandpa served, but it wasn't like a thing close to my family. Like I didn't know about even like SEALs or anything like that till probably college. Like it just never crossed my path. So I never really considered it. And I think by the time I knew about this stuff, it was too late for me to be a part of it. So, when they asked us, and it was funny, it was here in Austin years ago, I was like, absolutely. Like, I feel like I have a debt here I need to pay and go do this. And if I always told my brother, I'm like, if we can do something, we should. Like, it's just that simple. Like, if we have the ability to go over there and do this, we should. So I never feel like anybody should thank me. It was my way of saying thanks. But yeah, I think that the most impactful thing I would hear frequently from troops is, man, for like an hour, I forgot I was here. And I think that that's like a really good reset. It's like a real, and there were crazy things. We had a guy that we hung out with all day one time at a base, and it was a crazy story, but he was kind of the PR guy on the base. I can't remember what you call it, community, whatever. But he was taking photos of us while we were there. We hung out with him that night. He left, came back because he forgot his camera lens. We got on a plane in the morning, took off, and we landed. We were met by a bunch of people, and they wanted to question us. And he had committed suicide that night. And it just it hit me so hard that like it had all been kind of fun. Like we're doing our thing over there, but it made me realize you don't know what everybody's dealing with over there individually. And so it really made me crank it up and spend time with every single person. And I don't know how many people maybe we pushed the right way or how many people we didn't do a good enough job. And so that it haunts me a little bit because could I have done something different there? I had no idea, but there was a statistic that, for X amount of entertainment at so many intervals, it's like X amount less therapy when the troops were home. Like there was something about that. And so we had this kind of we have to do this many and get there this many times. And I don't know, man, I was just doing what I could to help. But
yeah, we've had SEALs commit suicide overseas. I mean, very senior officers. And part of the problem is you can't do anything unless they just say, hey, something's off, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, good. Yeah. Great.
And you guys have been trained more than anybody to
suffer in silence,
put emotions way deep down inside.
Yeah. It was, I remember that all the way back because I started out in the Marines as a recon Marine, then became a SEAL. And I always remember, especially in recon, suffer in silence. Like if you whimpered in a hurting position,
right?
They're like, suffer in silence. I think they're breaking that pretty well. And
it's good.
I say the highest form of masculinity is actually vulnerability, not victimhood, not complaining.
Yeah.
But vulnerability of saying, hey, something's off with me right now.
Yep.
Good. That's all we need to know. Let's get you help. The BMX thing, I watched that. That was I never saw any of these shows. I think by nature of our job, we did meet Lieutenant Dan.
Oh yeah. Gary Sinise.
Gary Sinise.
He was over all the time. So he went with Colonel Rainey, who was kind of our main point of contact. Yeah. And I never met him either, but Colonel Rainey was like, that guy is the best. He cares. He's always showing up. He was a proud patriot going over there and doing that.
Humble, just very quiet and unassuming, and it was very nice, man. And just spoke to us for 5 minutes, and they had to usher him off. And that was the only entertainer I've ever seen.
But got a good one.
Yeah, the BMX. I'm sure the troops. Were you playing while they were?
So here's what happened. I was, I had another life at home when I wasn't in Iraq, and I was around a lot of action sports guys, and around the X Games. I'd worked there a few years, kind of doing stuff here and there. And my original idea was I knew some guys that worked at Target, and Target was sponsoring Shaun White and all these action sports guys.
Yeah,
and they were close friends, and I was like, I know that they had an X Games Dubai, so I knew that there was this huge ramp in Dubai, and I know there's a base up there. I'm like, can we get that ramp to Baghdad and do a cool thing? And it just never panned out. But in the process of trying to figure this out, I met a guy named Nate Wessel, who's become one of my very best friends over the last couple of decades. But he built all the X Games skate parks. He's down with Travis Pastrana in Texas right now, building his whole new complex down there. And he's an artist, and he's a pro BMXer, and he's one of the hardest workers you ever meet in your life. And he's like, I can build a skate park every day. I'm like, are you sure? And so he convinced me that it shouldn't be skateboards, it should be BMX. And he was right, because the blacktop's pretty chewed up over there. You need a bigger wheel than a skateboard wheel. And we tried to do dirt bikes, but getting a bike over and suspensions and big jumps, that was hard. Needed bulldozers. BMX fit really well. And so we pitched the idea, and they were really hesitant because they'd never done anything like that. And as you saw in the documentary, like the first, like we got, like I remember a couple months before we went over on the first BMX tour, I was over on another band tour, and I had to go to the gate or the border of the base and like stick an envelope of cash through to this guy from a lumber yard in Baghdad, because they wouldn't give us wood on the base because it was hard to get wood. Like we're not giving you wood for quarter pipes. So I had to like buy wood outside, and then they were going to bring it back. And I didn't know if I'd ever see that money again. So we showed up at the show, and it was like, is the guy going to show up? And he did. And then the wood was terrible. It wouldn't flex. So we had to pull like plywood off of all sorts of weird stuff. And we were late, and there's all these people standing around. And we turned the music on. We finally got going, and guys started throwing backflips, and the place went nuts. And I was just like, oh, this is great. So, you know, it's the same audience. It's like, it's a younger male. It's kind of an adrenaline junkie, and it was a perfect fit. So it was just a really fun experience. I think we did 8 or 10 of those trips. And man, that one, like, I'd like to say my band was like the coolest, but there's no way. Like the BMX shows, the whole base would come out, and it was a party. It was cool.
That is great. I would have loved to watch that, man.
Yeah, it was fun.
So eventually you put the instrument down. It just, what was the decision point there? Like,
you know, it's funny. We were talking about this the other day. We did a third album, my band did, and we never played another show. The album was great. We got it done. We were excited to go tour. We were, you know, when we were doing these tours, we started bringing over like GoPro and Harley Davidson, and these guys would give products out. Mm-hmm. And then that went so well. You know, Harley Davidson say, hey man, can you come do this for us over in Europe or do this here? And so I was getting busy doing things like that actually paid pretty well. And my brother got married, and we just never played another show. Life just took us in a different direction. Yeah. We actually
hashtag adulting.
Yeah, it just got to a point where it was like we didn't book anything, and there was just other stuff to do. And it's kind of funny because usually you have some kind of like farewell concert, especially when it's been like a 10-year run. We've done pretty well, and we just vaporized, and that was it. But it's all good. No
pomp and circumstance, just fading too. Yeah. You know, it's amazing how the thing you love just sort of fizzles out in the end. I mean, timelines are different for different people, but I mean, as much as I loved the boys. I love the guys, and I did love the job, especially overseas when we were doing what we were trained to do, and there was purpose behind it. But at just some point, it was like the sword in the sand moment. It was just like, I'm tapped.
Yep. Yeah, you can feel it. There's something internal when it happens. It's like, it's okay. Like, people are always like, don't you miss that? And it's like I said earlier, I miss when it was good. Like, there were some really cool moments, but do I want to go back to driving around a van? And it's funny, I was in Atlanta airport last weekend, and I ran into John and Tim Foreman. They have a band called Switchfoot. I don't know if you know them from Southern California.
I've heard, the name.
But they were one of my favorite bands growing up. I love those guys. We shared a producer, and I was standing in line at the bathroom. They went in and brushed their teeth and headed out. And I actually met them a few times. So I was like, hey, John, how's it going? And I was just like, wow, those guys have been doing that for a long time, brushing their teeth in like the Delta Lounge. Yeah. And for some people, that's probably like amazing. And I think it's incredible. The fact that they can keep doing this at the level they have is pure success. I'm just saying, for me, it's like, I was like, boy, I'm cool with where I'm at.
Yeah.
Because I remember those days.
How old were you when you left? Or sort of
stop playing music?
Yeah, stop playing. Or the band sort of split up.
I don't know, 26, 27, 20, somewhere in there. Yeah.
And during that time, those 10 years with the band, I mean, were you hunting, and were you getting into?
It was a weird life, because you'd leave for 2 or 3 weeks, and then you'd come home and have a couple of weeks to kind of catch up on things. I was also working on a hard apple cider company with my friend Joe Herron. It's called Crispin's. We built that up and sold that to Miller Coors. When I was home, I was working on that pretty hard.
Damn, dude.
And just kind of, I don't know, man, back to that work ethic thing. I was just always staying busy, always trying to look for the next thing. And, I remember climbing a few mountains during that time, but it was very like, as you know, there's a little bit of decompression that has to happen when you come back. And so those windows got pretty short. So there wasn't many big trips in between. It was a lot of coming home, kind of getting centered and heading back over. But
dude, I think a lesson for like the young men listening is like, go hard in your 20s. Go hard in your 20s all the way to 35. I want to say the hard times ever stop or you stop grinding. But I would even tell my daughter, like, marry somebody in their 40s. Like, even if you're in your 20s, marry somebody in your 40s, because they've worked through all their bullshit. They're talking about it. They're probably financially sound. They're more mature. Yeah. So you guys sold it to Miller.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I had, at that point, I had kind of, once I started doing Iraq so frequently, I took a smaller role at the company. But when we started, it was Joe and I up in his attic and developing the logo, and we'd get samples and we'd test them all and be like, we like this one. And then they'd send us variations on that. And so that was a really fun experience. But I don't know. I was just grinding. It was just like,
what's next? Did you guys have a little distillery in the attic, or how were you brewing?
We bought a distillery in Colfax, California called Fox Barrel, because our data showed that this was going to probably take off on the coast first. And it was glass bottles. So instead of shipping glass bottles from Minneapolis, where we were, to California, like, let's get a distillery out there to make it. And then or a cidery, I guess. And then it's closer. And what happened was Chicago is where it took off. So we went from Minneapolis to buying a distillery in Colfax, California, or a cidery, sorry, and then shipping all the glass bottles back to Chicago, Minnesota. But
isn't that it all worked out
life? Yeah.
Like, this is what we're going to do. And then it's like a 180, and that's what you end up doing for life. And you're like, how the hell did that work?
Right. Never know.
Cradle to grave, from when you guys started that to when you sold it, how many years was that?
5 or 6 years, I think. It was a pretty quick
exit.
And I got to give a lot of credit to Joe. I mean, he just knew how to do it. He'd had another exit earlier with a nutritional soda company, and just when he started this, he's like, come do this with me. And it was a great learning experience. You know, I'm in my 20s and just doing what I do best. And he kind of handled the rest, and it was really cool. So
when did you really start getting into like the hunting?
When I was living in California. So after that, I was kind of sitting in Minneapolis going, what do I want to keep growing. I want to keep evolving. And I got some work out in California with some people that I thought would be really good mentors. And so I moved out there.
Where in California?
I was in Newport Beach.
Okay.
And
good living?
Maybe. You know, the hardest thing I could do was like put on spandex and ride my bike 100 miles. It was hard for me to find that. Like, it was suddenly like Spartan races and warrior dashes made sense to me. It's like the need to just feel dirty and just like push yourself. Like, oh, that's why people sign up. Because like, I don't even know how to get dirty in Newport Beach. Everything's so clean and pristine. And so there was this gap from growing up on a farm to being in California. And a buddy of mine just said, hey, I'm thinking about doing a Montana elk hunt, like with a bow. And I was like, I'm in. Like, I've never done that. But like, let's go. So that one really kind of changed my life. Like, once I got out there, I was like, oh, okay. I didn't even know this existed. It's a lot different than sitting in a tree stand waiting for something to walk by.
Yeah, like it's orienteering with
horses,
tactical selection of positions. With, did you bag an elk on that first one?
I didn't. No.
And here's the thing: it's just like people are like, "Oh, that must have been a letdown." No,
not at all.
I was in Montana for how many days? Like,
for 10 days.
10 days.
No
like,
cell service.
Great.
My dad, my friend, little camp up there. There's bears and elk, and we had a couple close encounters. And I got to, you know, it's funny. Like, I did a hunt in Alaska a couple falls ago, and my watch tracks all my sleep. I've never had higher sleep scores than sleeping in a tent in Alaska in freezing conditions, because you're just so calm and exhausted and like homeostasis, where you're supposed to be. Yeah. So there's a lot of value there. It's not just the killing.
No, which does serve a purpose, which a lot of people who don't grow up in, let's say, rural environments, don't hunt, understand that it's also the homeostasis of the environment.
I could go deep on why I think hunting is important and how.
Well, dude, this is what the platform is for. No, I'd be interested. Let's get to that. But
no problem.
You mentioned the Spartan races, and we've had Joe DeSanto on.
Mm-hmm.
He's that guy is great. He's a character in all these others. We're working with Highlander, which is just people come together and hike either 15, 30, 45, or 60 miles. You all go down in one location at night. It's just community.
Cool.
It's people unplug, and it's by a former BMXer who was with the Red Bull team. He's from Croatia. Yuri. I love this guy. He's just the nicest guy. And humbled that we found each other, but just getting out and breaking away from like the city of Austin. But you talk about that primal nature. I call it being like Teddy Roosevelt. Mm-hmm. But returning to nature, where we came from.
Yeah.
We just had Kelly Starrett on here who talks about like we're built to move.
Yeah, absolutely.
The human body is built to move, to go into nature. But even more so, with those races, it's hardship and community.
It is.
You go through hardship along, shared hardship. And it just builds bonds that that can't be broken. And when you go hunting with guys regularly, it's just like, these are my boys.
Yeah, it's such a connecting thing. It's really, I mean, they always say like our society is transitioning and changing faster than our DNA allows us to, right? Like we're still kind of more caveman than we are set up to work in this idea.
Some more than others. Yeah.
But returning to what your body's designed to do, I think is really, really healthy. My buddy Michael Easter wrote the book Comfort Crisis. I don't know if you know Michael.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm. And, he talks about how humans were designed to basically wear out animals. So traveling long distance, because animals are fast, you can't catch them, but you can wear them out. This is caveman stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So you 5-10 miles from camp, they finally get on them, and then you got to carry them back. And like, that's what humans are designed to carry heavy weight and travel long distances and eat intermittently and all those things. And it's complete opposite of what we're doing anymore. Yeah. So I think when you just give your body what it needs, it's amazing what it does for you. You just feel different.
So hunting, give me your philosophy on hunting. Cause still, like, you remember we're in Austin. We call this a blueberry and tomato soup. Some people are like, oh, you 2A community, like, savage. What's your perspective on hunting, both from a physiological, psychological standpoint, but not only, conservatism?
Boy, it's hard to quantify.
Or conservation, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I think I'll post an animal I've harvested on my Instagram, and it used to be I got a ton of hate. Yeah. And that doesn't happen anymore. So I think I've navigated out my audience. But it's funny how many people will criticize you, but love a cheeseburger. And I think there's a couple things. One, if you look at conservation, like humans have had a massive impact on the earth, and there is no way to unwind that. And so there has to be a balance. You look at like what's happening with the grizzly bears around the Yellowstone. Like they are protected animals. They were brought there. The idea was once they got to a certain scale, that then you were going to be able to hunt them. Well, that's not happening now because there's enough people that don't want to kill them. And I get it. They're beautiful animals, but they're getting into farmers' fields. They're killing the cattle. They're expanding. They're causing a ton of trouble. And I've seen these studies, and I don't remember the numbers, but they put cameras on these grizzlies in Alaska, I think it was. And the amount of baby elk and deer and caribou that each grizzly killed every day was jaw-dropping. I'm talking like multiples a day. And when you take that by how many thousands of grizzlies there are, like in Yellowstone, like think what that does for the elk and for everyone else. So then that affects the grass that those animals have been eating. And there's just this chain reaction. And so I think if humans are going to be here, we have to balance this stuff. I had a hunting guide, Fred Harbison. He's a hunting guide up in Alaska. And he told me, he goes, hunting is like Prozac. It's like without humans, okay, let's just take grizzly bears in the Brooks Range of Alaska. They don't have any predators. So their numbers are going to skyrocket if there's nobody hunting them. And then they're going to get to a point where they're eating eating everything. Yeah. So then they don't have food. So then they get sick and then they tank. And then they become vegetarians. Well, but the problem is you get one bad winter when the numbers are low, and that's how extinctions can even happen. It just kills a population. With hunting, they got people out there measuring and managing, and they're making sure that it's the right number so the ecosystem can support. And I think that that's like a really beautiful thing.
And that's why it's hard to get a tag in certain places, and it's monitored. And
I
will never cross a game warden. They scare the living crap out of me. Some of them are deadly.
Yeah, they are. So I mean, that's how I take that from a hunting perspective, from a food perspective. I start to get nervous this time of year because my freezer's almost empty, like my elk's almost gone. And it's like pure gold to me. Like I had a friend, my buddy Dia, he's Egyptian in descent and great guy, good buddy of mine. But he came over one time, I was cooking elk and he goes, where can I buy this? And I'm like, you can't, you just absolutely can't. He's like, what? Like, that's how good it is. The guys like Dia who like to eat at really fancy restaurants, like once you have something you carried off the mountain.
No hormones, no artificial. Yeah,
and they're ranging such a big area. They're getting, no matter what you do. I mean, even at my farm growing up, every cow had its own personal recipe of like the exact right nutrients. Yeah. But even that is not as biodiverse as an elk that's been ranging a 100-mile area for 6 or 7 years. And it's different. You feel different. I sound like Joe Rogan right now, but like, it's true. It's totally true. So for me, there's a lot of value in it. I'm not a cold-blooded killer. I always get emotional walking up on an animal.
There's respect. There's
massive amount of respect.
Thank you for the sacrifice you've given to feed our families. And yeah.
But also it's like the way humans have lived since humans were on this planet. And I think it's necessary. Like the amount of time that humans have decided to become vegetarian on the timeline of humans being on Earth is like the very end here, right? We've always eaten meat. And I think that's the way it should be.
But you see so many people that have gone like vegetarian, then go back to eating meat, and they're like, oh yeah, my health is just...
Endless examples of that. Pro football players. What was it? There was a documentary that came out at Sundance. I can't remember it. It was about vegetarian athletes, and they were talking about.
Was this the one where Arnold Schwarzenegger was in it? And
I think
it was
so.
basically led by a UFC guy who was hurt for 8 months, and he went into the exploration. Yeah, that took a lot of criticism, and I think there was a lot of money behind that was pushing it in a certain direction.
Right. Well, and they talked about how like the Roman, like the guys would fight in the Colosseums would eat only. They had like wheat bellies. They called it. Because these are gladiators. They eat only vegetables. Well, they were eating that because it made their bellies fat. So when they got stabbed, it couldn't hit their vitals. Like that was the real.
That's the true story.
Yeah, that's the true story. But it's I don't know. I mean, look, I eat a lot of vegetables too. Like I think balance is good. But for me, that's just how I choose to live my life, and that's how I encourage others to.
Have you ever done the carnivore? Like you ever tried it? Like 30 days or?
I've never done it. I've always been tempted. You know, you hear these stories of Jordan Peterson and guys who just their whole lives changed, and at some point I will. I think it's been hard with my life traveling so much and everything else. It's just hard to be consistent for me right now. But
I mean, when you go on the road, you're like, 5 guys. I'll take 2 patties, no bun, and
exactly.
But it's pretty interesting. All my buddies who have done it, I've got to give it a 30-day shot. All my buddies that have done it just like lean out.
Yep.
They look great.
Yep.
Like they feel great.
Yep.
But I heard the first 2 weeks, because you basically have no carbs.
Right.
Like your body's going through serious adjustments.
Right. And you got to get enough fat too. That's the thing with like elk is there's not a lot of fat and it satiates you. Like eating elk is kind of like when you have sushi and you're like, oh, I'm full. And then 20 minutes later, you're like, why am I so hungry? Because it just runs through you. So, but no, I have to try it. You let me know when you do it. I'll do it.
We'll do a 30-day challenge. There we go.
I'm in.
You know what I've started following? Will, I don't know if I pushed these to you, but there's some dudes out there that just simply go out and take, photography of the animals.
Yeah.
In like the mid of like Montana, like winter, the most beautiful photos I've ever seen. I've started following a lot of those guys. Just artists, dude. Artists. I mean, do you guys do any camera work when you're out there?
I mean, I typically I'm trying to run light because I'm covering. I've never drawn. So for people that don't hunt, you put in applications to draw a tag, and if you draw a tag, it means you're going to an area where there's a higher density of good animals.
Yeah.
I've never drawn one in my life, so I always end up in like these national forests where the only way you can win is if you go deeper and further than everyone, which means you want to go pretty light. So I've got this little tiny Ricoh camera that I bring with and my iPhone, and I would love the opportunity to take a big old lens and go do some stuff, but
I'm not carrying it. I'll make like Will carry it plus my pack. Or I'll go back to Nepal and get one of those yaks and just that was I felt really bad there, man.
I really want some mules. That's what I want. So
mules, pack mules.
Yeah.
Dude, I had a buddy in Colorado that had a pack mule.
Cool.
And of course he rented the pack mule, and the mule took off.
No.
And they were going to charge him he's like, I'll get it. And I think it took like 2 months. He finally, somebody called him, I think, said, hey, we saw that mule. He went back out, found it, brought it back. But
I had that happen.
No kidding.
We were I was moose hunting in British Columbia on the Yukon border. And we had been chasing this moose. We did 134 miles in 4 days on foot, me and my guide.
In the mountains.
Yeah. We camped like 5 miles away from this valley so the scent wouldn't go over. We had 7 horses we brought up part of the way. And we had kind of they had a corral for them there. But we had to go to this other valley to hunt this moose. So every day it was in and out. It was like 10 miles in and out, something like that. And then we were up there and we're just running the tops of mountains, glassing. And we got close to it was like day 4 we found him. So we got close day 4, we got close day 5. And then day 6 we weren't seeing him. So we went to look on the other side of the valley just randomly. And my guide goes, oh my gosh. And I'm like, what? He goes, the horses. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, the horses are down there. And so we were 5 or 6 miles, 7 miles from where the horses were supposed to be. Mm-hmm. It was like the last hunt of the year. It was freezing cold. There was no food left. The horses were like, they knew the way to the highway. They're like, peace out. We're heading home. And they had just headed. If we hadn't looked over that ridge, we would have lost all 7 horses.
So you went immediately down.
So we had to drop down, kill the hunt. I had to take my belt off and use it as like a leash or a halter. And we had to walk all the horses back that night. But it can happen. It's pretty funny.
134 miles in 4 days.
Yeah, yeah.
So let me ask you this. I mean, you're a fit dude, and I know you were into like endurance sports and everything else like that. Big time runner. Have you changed your workouts specifically to optimize your performance with
my workouts change throughout the year? Yeah. So like in the winter, I do more lifting. I ski a lot. I ski tour. So hike up every morning I hike up with my dog in the mountains and I ski down. That's like my cardio. What's your dog do? He hikes with me, runs down.
Oh, he runs down, he follows you skiing?
Yeah, he loves
awesome.
it. It's
what
like
type of dog?
He's a Swiss mountain dog. He's like 115 pound, kind of just a big, derpy, like, he's awesome. He's my best friend, you know, but he loves it. He gets so excited. So we go up with headlamps, you know, early in the morning, ski down, get first tracks, go to work. Then it's usually gym afterwards, putting muscle on. But this time of year, early summer is a lot of cardio, a lot of mountain running. Like I go home today, and then Saturday there's a Cirque Series race, which is a Brighton ski resort. It's about 7 miles, 3,500 feet of vert. You start at the base, you run up to the top and back.
But when you're doing a lot of cardio, is it hill work? A lot of
I usually wear like a 20 or 30 pound weight vest, and then I do 3 or 4 miles of like really hilly stuff. And it just, I think what that does is it not only it quickly pulls your body into shape, but I think it also really helps with your joints and your bone density. I saw this video.
Are you talking about the weight vest? Yes.
Yeah. I saw this TV show once where they were talking about like the amazing human body, and they had this guys, you know, those karate guys that break bricks.
Yeah. And
they measured the bone density of the one individual, his breaking hand and the hand he didn't break with, and it was like 5 times the bone density from breaking bricks his whole life. That just stuck with me. It's like you need to put your body under load. If I'm going to be carrying heavy packs around and doing all this my whole life, I want to build that. So that's been a thing I've done for a long time. So as it gets closer to hunting season, it gets to be more like 70 pounds and I'm hiking, not 20 pounds and running.
Yeah.
But I just kind of transition. Once you know your body well enough, you can kind of feel where you're lacking, where you're strong. And I kind of stay flexible and just try to make sure I'm ready to go when it's time to go.
Do you look back at when you started going out on these hunts, like the amount of stuff you brought? And have you has it become more streamlined?
Oh, yeah. That's something that, you can read every online article on what to pack and what to take, but you got to figure out what works for you. And it's very specific to the season and where you are and the animal and what you're trying to accomplish. I've definitely made the mistake of carrying 15, 20 pounds too much. And I don't do that anymore.
Funny thing, you look at the beginning of the Global War on Terror, we had like drop pouches, like with 4 magazines in the drop pouch, and then you had your pistol drop pouch, and then you had like probably another 8 magazines, and like all this. It was ridiculous. And by the end, no, you couldn't. And plus, we're in the summer of Iraq, and now you fast forward to like when I left in 2014, you had also nature of where I was at, but you could not have been more streamlined. 3 mags, maybe 1 in the gun, maybe an extra 1. I mean, we dropped weight. Even the plates became lighter and thinner.
And I think a lot of that finds its way into consumer products, which is really cool. Like it's fun to see you guys doing that and figuring it out.
I
do you think it goes the other way?
Let's not start a war to advanced technology, but there are so many products on the civilian market now that are a derivative of the war. But I mean, the same thing about the space race. I mean, all that exploration led to so many products. I mean, we just brought it up on Tang. Tang, which is awful, but came out of...
That's where Mylar blankets came from. Did you know that?
I didn't.
The space station was leaking heat out of a power generator. They were trying to figure out how to fix it. And they came up with Mylar as it reflects infrared heat, right? And they wrapped that. And that was the original use case for it. Now they make Mylar blankets.
That's insane.
Isn't that kind of cool?
Yeah. So was there a bad situation that you ran into on a hunt?
To start the company? Or?
Yeah. Or did you just see how unprepared other...
it was a lot of little touch points. So moving to California, and not to criticize your home state, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'll criticize it all day long.
I grew up around farmers. It's like something broke, you just figured out how to fix it. You were just finding ways. And then I did all those trips overseas where it was the same type of mentality. And then I moved to Newport Beach, and it was this mentality of, well, somebody else is going to fix this. I got to push a button on my phone, and somebody else will come and take care of it. And that was the emergency plan. And I can't tell you how many times I'd be out riding my road bike, and there'd just be somebody in Topanga Canyon with a flat tire sitting there with no cell service. And I'm like, somebody coming? Fair. I don't know. Like, what do you, they got dogs in the back overheating. Like, it was a weird thing where I'm like, wow, people really don't know how to change a car tire even. So what do you do if something big happens? So it led me down this path of what's happening to society, overpopulation, and you can argue climate change one way or another, but there are variances that happen that leave people kind of in bad spots. There was some political unrest going on. I was just like, wow, it feels like society is like this teeter-tot, and we're just balancing. And it wouldn't take too many things to really have something crazy like COVID happen where all of a sudden everything changes. And those emergency response solutions work until they don't. And usually when they don't is when you really need them. So, it took me down this wormhole. And Charles Darwin is most famous for survival of the fittest. But what he talked mostly about was the power of community and how like everything from an invading army to taking down a woolly mammoth, the way humans got through it was doing it together. And it really stuck with me because like growing up on a farm in Wisconsin, if a tornado went through, my family would throw the chainsaws in the truck and chains and we'd go over there and we'd help. And in California, it'd rain and people would lock their doors. And it's like, wow, it's every man for himself out here. And that's just the way our society has led people to be. And so how do I elicit change there? How do I make it so people are coming from a place of abundance where they're not only feeling confident they can take care of their family, but maybe they can help their neighbor? And if we could do that scale and we could move enough product to do that, now the EMTs can get to the people that really need it. And then we've got a solution that might actually work. So that was always the large scale goal of what I was trying to accomplish.
There's a lot of profound things in what you just said. One, I don't think people realize that the capacity of like emergency services is very limited. A lot less than they think. Oh. It's based off of like probability. But again, COVID showed so many weaknesses, not only in the supply chain of emergency response of our medical system. I think, urban areas tend to be less community based.
For sure.
And there is something about growing up in the rural areas of America where, you are dependent on one another. But we even saw it here in Austin. You guys in Wisconsin laugh. So when I go and give speeches like to like the Midwest, I'm like, the great snowstorm of 2021 in Austin, people lost their minds. But I mean, we've got...
You guys don't have a way to handle ice, and you've got your own power grid, and there's just a lot of reasons why that got really hard.
But so there was very few people helping each other out. I mean, my wife has a 4Runner with a lift, all-terrain tires, and like we're driving 20 miles an hour, and there'd be a Prius that comes like flying by us at like 40 right into a ditch. You're like, hey, are you okay? Do you need help? No, we're good. I'm like, I don't know what to say. Like, common sense. People don't know what they don't know. And had I not joined the military, I don't know how much, sort of contingency preparation I would have. I mean, yes, I've got like a blowout kit in my car prepared for certain contingencies, but that's a product of the community I came from.
Right. Well, we used to be kind of a blue collar country. It was farmers. It was people that had a lot of different skills to do their job. And now our society is like, I'm a digital marketing manager and I'm a big expert on this. I'm deep on this one narrow thing. I think we've gone from a country of kind of a diverse skill set to do your job to something really narrow. And I think that it's not that people are dumb or people don't care. It's just that you want to be successful, you focus on where you're going to find that success, and that becomes like the thing you know. And that doesn't include changing a car tire or navigating your way home or whatever, because you just don't think about that. And that's happening at scale.
Not enough people are listening to Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe is a genius.
Yeah,
the guy's off the charts, brilliant. But he's so right. This push to have everyone go to college, and I'm going to be honest, I learned very little in college other than you've got to demonstrate commitment and discipline to get it done. But I mean, there's so many things like calculus, which I think is like so worth. I don't know why when you go to the business school, you've got to take calculus.
Right.
It's an absolute waste of time.
I learned how to balance my job at college, my classes, my social life, paying my bit. Like that's what I learned in college. Really.
If I can get hold of my son and get him to understand this, I would push him towards the trade. Like, hey, dude, you will never be people will need your services. Like, let's go, like, become an electrician, become a welder. Yeah. Like, let's combine it and I'll help you start a business. We're having Ken Rusk, who wrote a book called The Blue Collar Millionaire. He's coming on here shortly. And the guy's a genius. Now, if you can learn to run a business, and pair that with your trade,
Right.
and know how to lead people within the trades,
Yep.
you're going to be wildly successful.
Yep.
And as society becomes more dependent on other people to do, let's call it for what it is, man shit.
Yeah.
Then you're going to become that much wealthier.
I always think about, I love your opinion on this too, given your experience, but there's a lot of talk of EMPs and things like that. And so just imagine if cell phones don't work and we need to get old school telephones working again. Like who knows how to do that anymore? I mean, I don't know if that's a real threat or not. It seems like it's something that comes up a lot in the media with killing all the power around here, but there's certain things like that a lot of people used to know how to do. And I have no idea where I would turn if I didn't have communication and I needed to put a landline into my house.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. It's, if you were to shut off all cell phones right now, there'd be suicides. There would be an absolute, it would be just pure chaos and violence.
Mm-hmm.
It would be insane.
I mean, and if the cell phones are off, that probably means credit cards aren't working, which means you can't get gas or food.
Not paying, push to start vehicles.
Yeah. There's a lot of, there's a book called 1 Second After. There's a series of them, but it's a really interesting book about an EMP hits and what happens. And it's like things you don't think about. Like the character in the book, his daughter has diabetes and needs insulin, but insulin has to stay cold and nothing's refrigerated. And, it's just like, oh man, I don't have a solution for that. Like I was talking to a friend the other day and he was asking me about my gun safe. And I have a digital code on my gun safe. He goes, what about an EMP? I'm like, oh man. And I've left it unlocked ever since that call because I'm like, I don't know. I got to figure this out. To put like a Faraday blanket over it. Or I don't know what I haven't thought about that.
Yes.
Like what if you had guns and they were locked in a safe you couldn't get in because the circuit board on the keypad fried?
Or you just need a thermal torch. You're going to walk right through that thing. It's, I'm all about progress. I'm all about the advancement of technology, but always keep like 1 foot.
For sure.
In like, what's the word I'm looking for? Analog type things.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
I mean, that's very much what I'm doing with Uncharted and with the business is like, I'm trying to, we have a thing we just launched called 4 Pillars. And it's like, not to jump around too much, but people always reach out to me and they're like, I get DMs like this all the time. Like, I totally believe what you're saying. What do I need to buy? And I'm like, well, that's not really the answer because you could have all the gear in the world, but if you can't move or if you don't know how to use it or if you're freaking out or you don't have the experience, like you're not getting anywhere. So what we're trying to do is like build a kind of an educational program that helps people. It's community, it's resources, resourcefulness, and then mental and physical fitness. And I actually did this with Travis Haley. I don't know if you know Travis.
No.
He was a Force Recon Marine.
Love him already.
Yeah, he's just a super smart guy. He's down in Phoenix, a good friend of mine. And he and I just whiteboarded for a few days, like what are the skills you need? Hundreds of them, right?
And those were the 4 pillars, correct?
Well, we started with hundreds and hundreds.
I know. Isn't that great?
And it's like all the things, like, can you change a car tire? Can you filter water? Can you find water? Is the water, and then we just started like, how do you bucket these things? And really for us, it's like, how do you give people kind of some things to just work on constantly? And it's not like a start here and go. It's like, do you have this skill? Yes, great. Come back next week and learn another one. But it takes intentional effort to stay in that analog world, to your point, because you can't just click the SOS button on your iPhone when things are really bad.
Yeah.
You've got to be self-sufficient.
So I was going to go there. So you guys are starting to get into the education component of it. I mean, are you going to start holding like workshops where people can come out to like Utah and spend 2 days with you guys?
I'd like to get there.
Yeah.
Our business, it's a small team. And honestly, like it's been a hard stretch for a startup business the last couple of years. And there's been a lot of ups and downs and lefts and rights. And we're growing and I'm really proud of what we're doing. Like our products get incredible reviews and our customers love it. But that's like taking all the bandwidth I have. But this was my attempt to, every other week we put out 4 articles. I can do that much for now.
Yeah.
And it's enough. So like, I would feel like a charlatan if I was like, yeah, if you buy our kit, you're fine. Yeah. Like that's BS. I'm not going to tell somebody that. Like the reality is you need a lot of stuff. And so this is my attempt to start there. I don't know where it goes. I would love to have a big training program and take people through this stuff, but that's a pretty big endeavor that I don't know. Someday I'll get
costly.
There.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, I've said this more times than I can remember. I'd rather go back to war for 10 more combat deployments than I would start another business. And maybe it's because we got
Makes me feel
comfortable. We got, we got
Yeah.
very comfortable. Like towards the end of the, your career with the band, you guys were like, another show. You're probably like, your nerves went down. It's like when jumping out of an airplane, I'm sure the first time my heart rate was rocketing.
Right.
Now it's just like, it goes up like 10 or 20, beats. And people think that like, well, what's the formula? Like, don't follow a formula. Yeah, there's some certain like rules of thumb.
Yep.
And how you manage your expenses, but dude, sometimes it's just like throwing spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks, and then go with the things that stick and don't do the things that don't.
I was talking about this last night. It's like anytime somebody tells me they are a life coach, I just run. It's like if somebody thinks they have all the answers, they probably have less than you think. Nobody knows. When you're starting a business, I always say it's like you should have mentors. You should bring those people in, but they've just had more at bats. It doesn't mean they're going to hit the ball every time. They've just seen it more times, and they can probably be a little more accurate on what's going to happen. But when you start a business, there's just so many unknowns. It's really just, I believe it's just showing up every day, like not giving up, doing the smartest work you can, working hard, and just hanging in there until it starts to plane out. And I don't know any other way to do it. Maybe that's the farm kid in me, but there's definitely been people that I brought into my business that have helped me solve things that I was doing wrong, and that's really important. But the long and short of it is it's a grind. And if you think it's anything else, it's some overnight thing. Like that's not my experience anyway.
And I think as a society, we're looking more and more for the hack, the shortcut.
Oh,
People expect
I'm working on a book right now, and I have a whole chapter on hacks. And I'm like, are you looking for like success or fulfillment? Because you can hack your way to like a successful test score. But do you want the person to hack their way to successful test score to do brain surgery on you? There's something about the experience and the process that actually leads you to fulfillment, which I think is what most people look for. Yeah. And so I'm with you, man. I'm a anti-hack guy for sure.
When you say the life coach, like, which is that industry has increased with social media. It's I'm going to look at your bio. What's your credibility?
Yeah.
What have you done? And I'm not trying to poo-poo on anyone's like accomplishments up to that point, but if you haven't run a company, if you haven't led people,
right,
like this is just not going to be a good pairing. It's like executive coaching, and in one of my companies we do executive coaching. Mm-hmm. I call it pure sort of like exploration. Yeah, that's what it is. Let's talk through your challenges. I'll give you my opinion. Yeah, but I don't know if my opinion is going to work for you or not. But it's almost like trial by error or process of elimination. Let's just try things until.
Well, you have a ton of experience, and you've done some amazing things, and being able to give those lessons to people so they can avoid the pitfalls is extremely valuable. I think I should back up because I apologize. I don't mean to put you into that bucket. I think there are people, usually people when they're that successful, they're doing that thing. It's like these guys meet at a bar that says they're a life coach, but they're driving Uber and doing everything else. It's like, I think there's very few people that you can actually turn to as a leadership person that has the experience that can help you. And
that is a good point, man. Cause I think everyone who I've met that has done like great things, started companies, they move on to starting another company. Yeah. And they keep on going.
Most of the time.
Yeah. Funny enough, it was literally yesterday. I've got this great gym at my house, Small Minds Repair Shop. Actually, we're going to start working out in the mornings, but
Small Minds Repair Shop?
Small Minds Repair Shop. It's where I get my mind right every morning. And we just built a sauna, and we've got a cold plunge.
You don't need a sauna here, man. Trust me.
Oh, I know. Seriously. I'm afraid to turn it on during the summer. Like the whole thing would probably just go up in flames. But I sent a video to my son. He lives in Virginia Beach, and I said, "Hey, imagine in your hand you had a blue pill, and in the other hand you have a red pill. The red pill is you're going to have you're going to wake up in the morning 8% body fat, like increased lean muscle mass, and in the blue pill is a 6-month plan with a diet and workouts." I said most people will choose the red. In fact, 99% of people will choose the red. Yep. Why? Because it's the shortcut. Yeah. But they will lose it as quickly as they got it because they did not build the foundational habits.
Exactly.
So it'll be short term, and he's understanding it, man. But that's my biggest. You see so many people give businesses a shot, and they throw it in once they hit some semblance of hardship.
Oh, I tell people all the time, at some point you have to burn the ships and be all in because there's always going to be an easier way to make money in the short term. Are you looking at somebody who says burn the ships?
Burn the boats.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay, I've got to connect you with Matt Higgins. He just wrote that book.
Awesome.
I mentioned him. He's a guest, what do you call it, judge? Guest shark on the Shark Tank? Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Oh,
Yeah, I'd love to meet him.
You hear his story, like abject poverty.
Yeah.
Like he's been wildly successful. Like he was Rudy Giuliani's press secretary, like the youngest one in history in New York City.
It's a fun job.
But he grinded. I mean, dropped out of high school, GED.
Yeah.
Like amazing dude.
Cool. I'd love to meet him.
I love the mindsets when you like. It doesn't matter profession, man. I call it warriors within the respective professions. Like you get a bunch of high performing people, even if like one's in government, one's in like education, one's in business. You know, they all have the same principles.
Yeah. And there's, again, I go back to like the success versus like the fulfillment or the satisfaction. I think what people are always looking for is that, and that only comes through grinding. I mean, when you've like, business has been hard for me. Like I'm not shy about telling people that because I don't want people to think I'm just like cruising over here. Like it's my whole life, like my whole life's net worth is in this business, and either it works or it doesn't. And when you're there, you find solutions. If I maybe was a 5% owner and there was another job over here that'd pay me more and I could have my weekends back, like I'd probably go take that job.
Yeah.
But I don't want to give up on everything I've built my whole life, so I'm going to find paths forward. And I think that at the right point with any business you're building, you have to kind of have that kind of commitment to like be able to squirt through to the next level.
And the tougher challenge there is getting the people who are part of your team to believe and act that same way.
Yeah.
And I've been successful and I've also failed wildly at that.
I think that's the hardest thing for me is not saying I have a problem with motivating employees, but I wish I was better at that. I wish I could drive more care and more passion than I currently have with my team. And I'm not saying they aren't, but there's a big difference between them and me. And if I could get them to where I am, I think we could move faster. Yeah. And that's just personally something that I work on every day, but it takes time, I think.
For me too, the biggest sort of, I don't want to say letdown, man, is I had that where I was at Dev Group. Like everyone was bought in. Everyone had skin in the game. One, there was no ownership and pay was never a...
but they're all like you. Right?
I would say that like I tried to be like them.
Okay.
My running mantra in life is always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And I'm fine with that because I was part of winning teams.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm the guy who has like 5 Super Bowl rings, but never actually played in any of the games. And I'm good with that. But like, that's now my like gold standard. And like, I'm coming to the realization it will never be like that. But hell, let's try to get as close as we can with whatever team I'm a part of. But Will, can we throw up Uncharted Supply Company? I just want to look at this because when I go to your site, like I just want to break everything apart and like go actually test it.
Yeah, man. I'll send you whatever you want. Give it a shot. I'd love your perspective.
So in terms of your customers, I know you've got hunters. You've just got sort of probably alpinists, nature enthusiasts.
When I built the first kit, the first product I made, I told my friends, like, look, I want something that if your 10-year-old son was home and something was happening, you could give him that kit and it would be a game changer. So I wanted something that was super easy to use, lightweight, effective, and not overcomplicated. So with everything we do, what I try to do is find better solutions, better ways to a solution that is more efficient. I think about like the iPod click wheel a lot. It's like MP3 players used to have like 1,000 buttons.
Yeah.
And then that iPod came out with just like a spin, click, spin. It's like, it's so simple and so effective that it works better for everything. And it's like, that's how I think about our products. It's like, how do I get people to where they're trying to get better or like faster?
Smaller, lighter,
easier to use. Yeah. So, we really started with what I call emergency and preparedness, and we still do a big chunk of that. But the other thing is what I call prepared adventure. And that's where it gets into the hunters and the fishers and the ATV guys and stuff like that. But we kind of have 2 verticals there, and it kind of works across. Yeah.
Like, I mean, the genius behind these jump starters. I mean, again, you just said it. What if your car has like just sort of a battery kill?
Yeah. I mean, 2 or 3 times a week, I will get a video from one of my buddies who left their dome light on and is like, hey man, check it out. And they can never believe it. Like that little red one there, that Zeus will start an 8-liter diesel back from the dead. My dad jumped semi-trucks with it back in Wisconsin in January. And it's just, imagine you're coming out from a hunt and you, after miles and days, you get back to your truck, you left your dome light on, you don't have cell service, you're exhausted, it's dark, and there's nobody to jump your truck. Well, in 20 seconds, you're on the road with that.
Yeah.
Versus now you got to hike up a hill and find cell service or hike down the highway. It's these little things that can make a big difference.
That's huge.
Yeah.
These kits are pretty impressive. Go up. Well,
the survival kits.
Yeah, the bug out bags,
Yeah.
and the survival kits. I mean, like that Yeti is just packed out. What specifically is that? Like a home?
Yeah. So on the right there, the gray one is the 72. That was our first product. That's a 1-person, and then the middle one is a 2-person, and then the Yeti is a 4-person. So with all of our kits, what we've tried to do again, like Clint Bruce is a buddy of mine. He was a SEAL. But he's always like, you've solved like 60% of every emergency with this, because when you open that bag up, everything opens up. There's screen printed instructions. They're color coordinated with the pocket. So it's like first aid is in a red pouch, and it's the only red pouch. And if you're looking for first aid, now you can forget about the other 10 pouches, and you're starting to get in the right direction, which helps your adrenaline calm down. It helps you make good decisions. So like everything we do is not only about high quality product, but it's guiding somebody through, because most people aren't training for emergencies every day, and their adrenaline's going to spike, and then they're going to get tunnel vision, and things are going to get complicated that normally wouldn't be when you're in an aisle at REI looking to buy gear. So that's really how we approach these things. It's just instruction, organization, and high quality stuff.
And is this you and your team, like literally going through sort of the customer user experience? And
this was, I mean, I always like to say it's me and the team, but when I started this, I spent a lot of time myself, just took some time off of work and solved for this. And it's kind of become our North Star with all the products we build. It's like, how do we make stuff that just guides people quickly to a solution? And so when we build new products, that's the lens it has to go through.
It's awesome when you see like again, it doesn't matter if you're a hunter, a seasoned combat vet, like the way their gear is all modularized, it like bare bones, like pouches. Yeah, they know exactly where to go. Everything's
I was at Yeti yesterday, and we were talking. I was meeting with their product development team, talking about ideas around their storage solutions, like that box. And that was one of the things we talked about. Is like we have stuff sacks, and we've got labels. We've got different colors, because sometimes there's a storm coming in, and you need your layers fast, right? And if you've got 6 bags in there that all look the same, now you got to open each one and find it. It's like there are things that help you solve for problems faster, and sometimes that's a difference between that storm getting to you and you're soaked and then you're cold versus like getting dry quickly. And that can be a game changer, just that simple thing. Yeah. So it's not rocket science. It's just being thoughtful and like thinking about the most efficient way to do these things.
I mean, having gone through like SEER training, like even this space blanket in a, let's say, in extremis situation.
Like, those things are incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember going through winter survival where you had to dig your snow cave.
Yep.
And they would give you a candle, and they said this one little candle can raise the temp like 10 degrees within the snow. Like that 10 degrees is a world of difference.
Massive.
Yeah. This is, man, good on you for what you've created. The dog, is that the logo? Is that your dog?
No, so when I started the company, I had a bulldog. So the idea there was, I was like, what's a good iconic thing that like is around survival that nobody else has used? And it's a Saint Bernard is what it is.
Yeah.
Because Saint Bernards were bred by the monks in the Bernard Pass to go out. They basically bred them to protect the monastery, but they found that they had an incredible sense of direction. So in like a snowstorm, they could find their way home. They had an incredible sense of smells. They could find people, and they could dig like an MFer because they were 250-pound dogs. So if somebody got buried, they could get them out faster.
Are they still used on certain like avalanche teams?
Yeah, I think they still use them out there. It's a little more of a historical thing now.
Yeah, now.
But I love that idea of just a dog. Dogs are just unpretentious. They do their job. They love you. They're sitting by the fire waiting to go. And so that was the logo. I now have a Swiss Mountain Dog, which is actually the breed that the Saint Bernard was bred from. And he's kind of our mascot, though. He's not the logo, but he looks a heck of a lot like it.
He's got an office. He gets to come to work.
His office is the couch in the office, and he's got his routine every day. And we go to events, and he is. I always say he's my booth babe. Like we don't have people hand us stuff up, but just a big dog sitting there, and it pulls everybody in. So he's got a job.
Where's the future with this company? I mean, where are you guys looking to expand into? I know the education, that's a big nut to crack because it's that's mainly time.
Yeah, it is. We continue to create new products. We've got some really cool stuff out. We have some pet stuff coming out even. We made a dog collar that has a first aid kit built in for a dog because my dog's almost died a few times following me around. And so...
a first aid kit specifically for the dog.
Love that. Okay. It's kind of fun. People love their dogs. They love buying stuff for their dogs. And it's kind of following in our mindset and expanding what we do. We're working on a whole new... Actually, I probably shouldn't say. We're working on a lot of really interesting stuff. Just trying to get better at what we do. But the big thing for me is these products are great. I'm just trying to get them in more people's hands. And it's a business. We got to make money, but this is my mission. Like when I'm dead and gone, like I want people to look back and be like, that guy's company saved 10,000 lives. Like that's my goal. So for me, it's how do we get in front of more people? How do we get people to take these things? Because, they're expensive. It's expensive to make a kit full of high quality stuff. But I can tell you, if you read the reviews on our site, if you talk to people, it's like, that really saved my day. It saved my life. It fixed this. It fixed that. And man, you don't need it until you need it. And then you can't go buy it at that point. So
a kit for $500 is a lot less than your life.
For sure.
Or your child's life.
Yeah. I always say it's priceless when you need it.
Well, I've read a few of your, what do you call it? Blogs, editorials, editorials. Well done. I've even learned a lot of things. I think for parents, and let's see what we can do to drive people to your site.
I appreciate it.
Emergency preparedness is, so many people. I mean, the run on the stores and people didn't have water. If you don't have excess water, or you don't have excess food.
Yeah. But it's that stuff, and it's also like, maybe you got a kid that's going mountain biking for joining the team. Like they're getting out there and something breaks, or it might be sending your kid to college for the first time and just making sure they've got a little kit that sits there that if something happens, they're ready to go. So a lot of times people go right to the hurricanes with emergencies, but an emergency can be a flat tire if nobody's around and the weather's bad. It can be really small. So for me, it's like I always say, it's not only a go bag, it's a go-to bag. Like I'm always digging in there for gloves or a hat or beanie or whatever, paracord. I forget a dog leash. Like there's so many things in there.
Yeah, that's the one thing I never like to dig into my go bags. Cannibalize them.
Break glass in case
It's got to stay there. So you're also doing a podcast.
Boy, that's old now. It's been a couple years.
I know that's time consuming.
I've gotten too darn busy, but there are some good ones in there. Jack Carr's in there. I've got a buddy of mine that saved a bunch of lives up on Everest. I've got Michael Bland, who was my drummer and Prince's drummer, talking about some crazy things about Prince. My buddy Greg Bennett, who's a world-class triathlete, and the mindset and the visualization he used. So there's some cool ones in there. They're still very relevant, but I wish I could get back to it, man. I just, how much time it takes to do it right, and I just don't want to half-ass it.
Only so much time in the day, and you got to prioritize. I know ultimately you got to pay people, and I know that's key, or that's at the top of mind for you as well.
For sure,
just keeping that revenue coming in. Well, dude, I can't thank you guys enough for coming to Austin.
It's been fun.
We will figure out a way to do stuff because we've got trips coming on.
Yeah,
and maybe we can go into survival classes and use that forum to teach people how to start a fire, or how to construct a in extremis sort of barrier, or shelter.
Yeah.
And we love those even starting fire, man. And I'm not talking about like throwing some petroleum or Vaseline on cotton balls. I'm talking about like fire really? Starting with sticks.
Well, that's where I get it. That's a little bushcraft for me, if I'm honest. People always go, do you know how to do that? I'm like, dude, I carry Bic lighters everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's... I'm kind of like, what's the simplest, 4 or 5 Bic lighters, you're going to be all right.
Yeah. Jay, I've always have them, but we went through jungle training in Panama, and we brought out this SEAL from Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
And this guy was awesome. Wow. We were going through traps, snares, fire starting, and it was like you saw the frustration on a lot of guys. The fire starting was more difficult than guys thought, but
it's not easy.
No, it's a good team building exercise as well. But now, Kristen, I can't thank you enough, man. Amazing story, and again, thank you for making 39 trips over to a combat zone to entertain troops, man. That's huge.
Too easy.
Cool.
Yeah, all
right, guys. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next time.